A 92-run win in an IPL playoffs game? Was it one of those matches for GT they never faced during the regular season and were left with no answers as a result during the playoffs? We dig deeper into the first playoffs game of the IPL 2026 in this episode of the 23rd Yard Club Cricket Podcast. They often ask, what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? This is the irresistible force paradox, used to describe two separate entities of sort of equal strength. We may not know much about that, but last night we got the answer to a question in a sharp contrast to this one. What happens when an unstoppable force meets a very movable object? Or, an even better one, what happens when the unstoppable force doesn't encounter any object? Because that's exactly what happened in the first playoffs game of the 2026 IPL. RCB were unstoppable. GT arrived at the toss, even won it, and then they became movable. They actually disappeared. This was a game between the number 1 and the number 2 sides after an entire season in the IPL, and the margin of loss of 92 runs could well have been 150 even, but for RCB cooling off towards the end. The game was over by the time the GT chase had reached the end of their own power play, and RCB had long taken some of the foot off the gas. There will be questions asked of GT after this game, but for me the biggest of them is how RCB even managed to get to 254 in 20 overs on a surface that, in the words of their own batting coach, that is GT's batting coach, Matthew Hayden, was a bit too paced in nature. And there was merit in that assessment from Hayden. The ball kept low every now and then. You don't have to go too much further than Kohli inside edging one to the stumps, or the Butler wicket later in the innings, and to a few deliveries that were bowled at Gill as well as the ball snuck under the bat. This is when Gill won the toss, decided to field first and said there might be dew in the second innings. Even when RCB batted and once the power play was done, they had their challenges. Something that even Rajat Patidar mentioned in the post-match chat, explaining why he started off slowly, getting to only 14 of 10. The RCB captain explained that the pitch wasn't the easiest to bat on, and despite having gotten a solid start, they were scoring at less than 10 and over after the 13th over. Then, a switch was turned on. The pitch seemed to trade places with a highway, and from 128 scored in the first 13 overs, RCB nearly doubled their score in the next 7 overs, batting at a whopping 18 runs per over in those 7 overs. How did GT let that happen? Gill blamed the GT fielding for this, and he might have made a point there. But was that the whole truth? What Gill was referring to was a couple of catches that were put down in 1 over and a couple of other misfields that might have let the batters off the hook. One might argue that 2 dropped chances shouldn't break a team down so badly, but contextually, those came at the most inopportune moments. As I said earlier, RCB's run rate had stumbled to less than 10 and over at the end of the 13th, with Kulwant Kejriwal having conceded just 3 in the very first over that he bowled, which was also the first over of the season for him. The pressure was on RCB, especially given that Rashid Khan had 2 more overs to be bowled and he had conceded just 8 in his first 2. Prasidh Krishna bowled the 14th. He should have gotten Patidar out of the very first ball, but Kejriwal dropped a tough catch that I think might have been a wee bit easier for Joss Butler with the gloves when he was running back. 2 balls later, Patidar pulled Krishna to deep square again, did not find his timing, where Rabada dropped the sitter for those levels. 12 came of that over after those 2 drops, but the real carnage came after that. Patidar took Kejriwal down for 28 runs in the very next over and then smacked Rabada for 2 sixes when he came on to bowl his final over later in the innings. Interestingly, both the fielders who dropped those catches would bowl an over after that and go for runs. Kejriwal, as I said, for 28 and Rabada for 15. So yes, fielding played its part. But there could be questions asked of Gill's captaincy as well. Did he get rattled under pressure? Did he rely too much on data? Because for some reason, Gill held Rashid Khan's 2 overs back till the very end and then didn't even bowl him again after he had conceded a lot of runs in the third. So he ended with just 3 overs bowled. And it's saying something that your most economical bowler for the evening doesn't complete a spell. I think what might have happened here is that Gill held Rashid back for Tim David, whom the leggy had dismissed the last time they had played. Overall, Rashid has dismissed David 3 times in their T20 career, with the Aussie averaging just 23 against him and striking at a career strike rate of 132 against Rashid. Fair to say that the matchup is in favor of Rashid, and at some level, it might have made sense to have some Rashid deliveries in a skitty for David. At the same time, Gill might have been put off by what happened in Kejrolia's first over, the 13th of the innings. 1 over before those 2 drop chances. Kejrolia went for just 3 in that over. Now, you cannot probably blame Gill for wanting to bowl him again, and that was the over in which Kejrolia went for 28 runs. The cat was out of the bag, and from then on, Rashid or no Rashid, the runs were always going to come. And yet, for arguably the best T20 bowler ever in the history of the game, to start off with figures of none for 8 from his 2 overs and to then not finish off his quota doesn't sit too well tactically. Patidar will get all the plaudits, and rightly so. Not too often, even by today's standards, will you see a batter convert a 14 of 10 sort of a start into a 33 ball 93, scoring at 18 and over in the last 6. And Patidar had led a strong resurgence in that regard, unbothered by the captaincy or the pressure that comes from being defending champions. At the same time, a lot of praise is due to Krunal Pandya this way. He partnered Patidar in a 95-run stand for the 4th wicket and, more importantly, held his own. RCB had lost 2 wickets in the same over. Kohli and Padikkal both dismissed in contrasting fashion. Around the same time, Rashid had also bowled 2 overs and had been almost unscorable with Patidar and Krunal, who came on to bat at number 5, giving themselves some time. Pandya himself had made a very slow start, getting to only 9 of his first 13 balls before taking Prasid down for 10 of his next 2 balls. And in that over in which Kejroliya went for 28, it was Krunal who began the chaos with successive boundaries. Even at this stage, Patidar was only on 22 or 14. But this momentum that Krunal brought with him looked to have rubbed onto him. And from there on, he took the GT bowling down with ease. Now, why I talk about Krunal is that he has already picked up 13 wickets this season and bowled with an economy rate of 8.64 amongst those who have bowled at least 30 overs this season. And that's around 2 overs per match. He's the 8th best in terms of economy rate. In the first 9 matches he played this season, Krunal had scored a sum total of 40 runs, having batted just 4 times. His batting was not quite required, and when it was, he didn't spend enough time at the crease. Then came that Mumbai Indians game, in which he batted so long that he cramped up, but went on to win his side the game, knocking Mumbai out of the tournament as well. The next time he batted was against SRH in that last league game of the tournament for them. Krunal seemed to have come out with an instruction to see his side through to finishing in the top 2. And he did just that, finishing unbeaten 41 and in turn also garnering some valuable batting practice. And here against GT, not only has he scored 43, but exactly batted how his team would have wanted him to. Like if this was an assistant football manager giving out last minute instructions to Krunal before he went out to bat, he would have probably told him to see out Rashid Khan, pick the out boundary without letting another wicket fall quickly after that, and then go after the lesser bowlers once you have seen out 2 or 3 overs. Krunal did exactly that. He made 43 of the 95 that came in the partnership and did so at the kind of strike rate that you expect from someone batting in the middle overs, and provided Patidar with the kind of launch pad that blew GT out of the contest. Krunal Pandya built the runway on which Rajat Patidar later took off. He laid the foundation for the Patidar destruction, and he was a stabilizer before the Patidar storm. Krunal had turned RCB into that unstoppable force to which GT just rolled over. So that's that from me for this episode of the 23rd Yard Club. We'll be back soon with a few takes on the Eliminator as well. But till that time, please like this video and do subscribe to this cricket channel by clicking on the button below. If you like cricket, that is. Till next time, please take care. Bye-bye.